Welcome back, everyone. I am so glad you're here for episode 2. If you caught the last episode, you kind of know exactly where our heads were at. We were just standing there at the very beginning of this whole journey, staring at a massive blank slate. We had all this energy, a ton of skills, and honestly, that restless, almost unavoidable feeling where you just know you're meant to do something bigger. We wanted to build something that would actually change our financial reality. We definitely weren't looking for just another hobby. So let's look a little closer at what actually happened when we finally took the plunge. That brings us right back to the core question that literally kept us awake at night. What are we going to build? Because we didn't want something to just try out for a couple of weeks and then abandon, right? We needed something that would work, something that would grow, and above all, something that could scale. We were chasing a fundamental shift in our lives, and finding the right answer to this one specific question was basically our only ticket there. Okay, let's dive into this. Once we found our focus, things moved fast, seriously fast. We spent a few days just looking around at different industries, trading, services, agriculture. But then, over a few weeks, it hit us. People eat every single day. Not occasionally, daily. That massive realization led us to narrow our focus down over the next few months to a scalable packaged bakery. High demand, repeat customers, standard products, the whole shebang. But we also knew we had major gaps in our knowledge. And honestly, that realization pushed us straight into step 4, getting real training. Now, I want to be super clear about our approach here. We didn't jump in blindly. We went to learn. And I don't mean we just sat on the couch binge-watching YouTube tutorials. This was definitely not some casual, hey, let's watch and try weekend project, where we thought we'd just stumble our way to success. No way. We sought out real, physical, intentional training. Because if we were going to build a real business that could change our lives, we had to respect the craft enough to actually master it. And to be completely fair to the process, we really did learn a lot. We focused purely on mastering the craft. We learned how to mix properly, actually feeling the dough, understanding the hydration levels. We figured out how to get true consistency so the 100th loaf looked exactly like the first one. We learned how to produce to a strict standard. Over those months of training, our techniques improved so much, and the products actually started coming out exactly like we imagined them in our heads. I honestly can't even begin to describe the sheer excitement that comes with that specific stage. It's when your hands finally just know what to do without you even having to overthink it. When your output starts looking genuinely professional. It leads to this massive spike of internal confidence where you catch yourself thinking, okay, we can actually do this. It is such a euphoric feeling. You're looking at what you've physically created with your own 2 hands, and you genuinely feel ready to take on the world. But here's the harsh truth, the part nobody ever taps you on the shoulder to warn you about. It's probably the biggest blind spot for almost every new builder out there. Being trained in production is absolutely not the same thing as being prepared for business. Now, they might sound like the exact same thing when you're covered in flour and riding high on success, but believe me, they are 2 completely different universes. The gap we were unknowingly walking into was massive. On one hand, sure, we were becoming experts at the physical craft. We knew how to make the product, how to get the perfect texture, how to maintain the quality. But on the flip side, we were flying entirely blind when it came to the financials. I mean, what did it actually cost us to produce that perfect loaf? How do you price it to actually ensure a profit? How do you track performance or manage waste? We were literally ignoring the exact math required to survive. And you want to know the craziest part? At that stage, we didn't even see it as a problem. Why would we? Because physically, everything still looked incredible. The baked goods were coming out perfectly, our friends were impressed, people were tasting it, and the feedback was just overwhelmingly positive. When you constantly have people telling you how amazing your product is, you naturally and falsely assume that you've got this whole business thing figured out. So riding high on that false confidence, we pushed directly into the next phase, the setup phase. We were moving so fast. Setting up the workspace, buying all the heavy equipment, sourcing our materials in bulk, and gearing up for real large-scale production. It felt amazing. It gave us this really exciting, fast-paced illusion of incredible progress. We were checking all the boxes, moving down the list, and feeling like real entrepreneurs. But beneath the hum of those brand new mixers, and underneath all of that visible, exciting progress, there was something missing, something fundamental. A really dark reality was lurking just beneath the surface of our shiny new bakery setup. Whatever this missing piece was, it wasn't visible. You couldn't see it just by looking at the perfect golden color of the crust.
Standard visual checks of our baked goods were never going to catch this massive flaw. Looking around, everything seemed like it was in perfect working order.
It was also not obvious. When the ovens are hot, the smell of fresh baked goods fills the air and literally everyone around you is complimenting your hard work. Well, it is dangerously easy to remain completely ignorant. All that positive feedback just acts like a smokescreen.
So it wasn't visible, it wasn't obvious. And honestly, it didn't even feel urgent in the moment. But it was absolutely critical. We were about to learn the incredibly hard way that this unseen, unmeasured piece was actually the most important part of our very survival. It was quite literally the oxygen of the business.
And here is that fatal flaw, laid out as clearly as possible. While we had learned how to produce, we had not learned how to measure. That was the dangerous gaping hole right there in our foundation. We knew exactly how to create a physical item, but we had absolutely zero systems in place to track its actual financial performance. We basically built a high-speed engine without installing a dashboard.
And the truly terrifying thing about this specific kind of ignorance, it doesn't show itself immediately. No, it waits. It is incredibly patient. It lets you start, it lets you build, it even lets you feel like things are working beautifully for weeks, sometimes even months, before it quietly begins to drain your accounts and cost you absolutely everything.
We definitely didn't know it yet, but the ticking time bomb of unmeasured costs had already been armed. We were heavily invested, standing right there in our brand new bakery, about to enter the phase where everything looks exactly right on the surface and still goes completely and utterly wrong.
Which brings us right to episode 3, Setting Up, the excitement before reality hit.
Thanks so much for joining me on this journey today. If you know someone else who's building something real, and hey, maybe they're ignoring their own blind spots, definitely share this episode with them. And make sure you subscribe right now so you don't miss out, because next time the honeymoon phase officially ends and the real test begins. I will see you in the next episode.